In the unforgiving land of Rayclast, where every step could be your last, one lone exile, that's me, there is to challenge the ancient and powerful Queen of the Val, Atziri, the oldest boss in all of Path of Exile. This is the story of a hero's journey, battling against all odds to face off with her within her sanctuary, in under 10 hours of course. And because every good challenge needs stakes these days, should I fail this task, Jinx will take over my channel. Let's get started. Actually, just a quick little disclaimer first from editor Schwingy. Two things. One, this was recorded a while ago in patch 3.22 during the Flashback event that ran for a week. It's just taken me a long time to get around to editing it since I've been enjoying Affliction so much. Hopefully that's not a deal breaker. And two, this is not meant to be some super impressive speedrun type video. I am well aware that there are way better players than me out there defeating the hardest bosses in the game in less time than this. This is just about me challenging myself to beat Atziri in under 10 hours for my own satisfaction. Regardless, I've put in a lot of my time into this video, so if you enjoy it, which I really do hope you do, please show it some love. Without further ado, sit back, relax, and enjoy. This hero's journey begins very much like all exiles in Path of Exile, head in the sand on the Twilight Strand. I get up and make my way over to Hillock, the first threat blocking my path to the first town. With nothing but a dagger and an inkling of common sense, I run circles around him and take him down. The locals are all very happy and offer me a skill gem for my troubles. I'm going for a trap-focused build, so I gladly accept the explosive trap skill gem, which I slot right in my wand's socket to equip it. I make my way through the coast and find this shabby jerkin with 2 linked green sockets, which I now move my explosive trap and chance to poison support gem into. This basically lets my traps poison things now. I fight my way to the tidal island where I face off with Hailrake, an actual aimbot, so that I can return some medicine or something to help the townspeople. Look, I'm doing it for this quicksilver flask and this swift assembly gem. In the Roa-infested mudflats, I find something called a Sentinel controller, which maybe now's a good time to tell you that I recorded all of this during Path of Exile's 1-week flashback event where they brought back Sentinel and Lake of Kalandra temporarily. Sentinels are these cool devices that you can use at will to make enemies stronger, but also drop more loot, and I will absolutely be using these on my quest to defeat Atziri. I also find my first mirrored tablet, a weird stone pillar looking thing that will eventually let me go to a special location known as the Lake of Kalandra. I reach level 4 and can finally equip that Quicksilver Flask, which gives me a little speed boost when I use it. I also put some points into my passive tree, which, yeah, if you've never seen it before, can be a little overwhelming. Thankfully, I totally know what I'm doing, so you don't have to worry about that. I put these glyphs in the wall and yeah, the door to the submerged passage opens up. Back in town, the village people are happy that I did open up that door, I'm not really sure, but they give me Bear Trap, a new trap that makes enemies take more damage from other traps, and Frostblink, a skill that lets me sort of teleport on a cooldown. In the submerged passage, I kill this special essence monster and he drops this really cool scepter that has 3 white sockets, which lets you put any color gems in there. It's also here that I open a portal to the Lake of Kalandra for the very first time. It's a really unique looking area, but I died. And again. In the flooded depths, I take on the Granddaddy Crab so that I can get an extra skill point. And over in the ledge, I take the time to destroy Kudukuku, the false god, in hopes that he'll bless my run with good RNG. He did not. Over in town, I graciously accept the multiple trap support gem, something that will absolutely come to bite me in the ass pretty soon. I really should have taken added cold instead. I also identify these move speed boosts, which will be crucial for trying to get through the campaign quickly. In the prison, I complete my first lab trial, a requirement for being able to specialize in a subclass later on in Act 3. Further down, I get ambushed by Brutus, arguably the first real boss in the game. He's tanky, hits hard, has a get over here move, and holy shit, I do no damage to him. I completely ran out of mana trying to take him down and even had to resort to going back to town just to refill it. After some close calls, I eventually took him down and was rewarded with more gems for my efforts. Flame Dash will be replacing Frostblink since I can use it more times in a row, and I also was able to grab Added Cold to replace that crappy multiple traps gem I was using, and the Vitality Aura from Nessa, which just gives me a bit of life regeneration. I found this cool shield with life and resistances, which are both really helpful for staying alive, and then went and took down Captain Fairgrace for another skill point. After reaching the Cavern of Wrath, I went back to town and Nessa was like,
"Hello Schwingy. Thanks for visiting me again. Wink. Here is that sign you requested earlier. K. Bye. Love you."
Yeah, no, that really happened. It was kind of weird. Anyways, she gave me Lightning Trap, which I immediately replaced Explosive Trap with. New main skill. As I ventured deeper into the cave, I found myself in this treasure-filled hall where I would face off against the final boss of Act 1, Merveille. It was a fierce battle, but with some perseverance and the 2 starter life flasks I was still rocking, I managed to take her down. Just shy of being 1 hour into the challenge and only Act 1 is done. If I keep up this pace, I'm not gonna make it. Welcome to Act 2, home to monkeys, spiders, bandits, and worst of all, Grost.
Exiles.
First things first, I made my way over to the crypt found in the Fell Shrine ruins so that I can complete my second lab trial. Once inside, I finally had my first life flask upgrade drop, something I was long overdue for. I completed the trial, and before I knew it, I wound up fighting Creighton, the first of 3 bandits I would need to deal with. The bandits are interesting in that you can decide to help any one of them if you wish to receive a unique passive bonus, but Creighton's is pretty much considered trash, so he needs to die. Afterwards, I entered the Chamber of Sins where I had 2 goals. 1, find the 3rd lab trial and complete it, which was easy enough, and 2, go save Helena by killing this messed up dude with a scorpion tail. Back in town, my exile-hating homie Grost gave me the Summon Skitterbus gem, which is a perfect fit for this trap build I'm going for. It summons 2 little robots that can activate my traps for me and chill and shock enemies, making them slower and take more damage. I also bought the Assassin's Mark gem, a skill that makes me do more crit damage to enemies I mark with it. Great for bosses, like this second bandit leader, Oak. His passive bonus for helping him is also pretty terrible, so I took him down. He actually dropped a pretty decent one, so it was time to say goodbye to that cool 3 white socket scepter I found earlier. Farewell, you will be missed. Finally, I met up with Alira, the 3rd and final bandit leader who genuinely gives a pretty good bonus with mana regen, crit damage, and some resistances. I decided to be a bro and help her out. Then it was time to squish some spiders over in the Weaver's Nest, where I realized something wonderful. This build slaps. Back in town, I talked to Silk and he gave me the Trap and Mind Damage support gem, which I'll be including in my main gem setup once I can find a piece of gear that can fit it in. Next up was an area known as the Val Ruins, or more often referred to as the worst zone in the game. It's a bit of a maze, so it's pretty easy to run into a lot of dead ends while trying to find the way out. I actually got pretty lucky here though and had my first Chaos Orb drop. In case you're not too familiar with the game, Chaos Orbs are sort of the equivalent of gold or money in other games. We gamers use them to trade with one another for gear upgrades. I'll be holding on to this one for now though while I think about how I want to spend it. In the very next area, I was fighting a unique snake monster when this happened. I couldn't believe it. The first unique item I got was actually useful for my character. While I wasn't going to take advantage of everything these boots had to offer, they were still a huge upgrade, giving me a ton of movement speed and speeding up how long it takes for me to throw out my traps. After that amazing luck, I sped my way through the caverns and into the ancient pyramid, where I would ascend it floor by floor until I reached the top. I pressed this inconspicuous button and then waited. And waited. And waited some more, until finally the boss of Act 2 showed up, Val Oversoul. With the giant robot destroyed, it was time to head on over to the Sarn encampment in Act 3. Things were looking up. Here we are in Act 3. In my experience, this is the longest of all the acts, but I'm going to try and get through it quickly. The first thing I wanted to do before even making any progress was to go ahead and put that single Chaos Orb I found earlier to good use. So I went ahead and traded it with another player for a Tesalio's Sign Ring. This ring gives a lot of cold damage, and I'm thinking it's going to be a significant upgrade to my damage. Also, I wanted to stop looking like a hobo, so I put on some MTX. There we go, much better. In the crematorium, I got lucky and found the Labyrinth trial right away, which basically never happens, and completed it no problem. After that, I had a little showdown with Piety and her goons on behalf of Clarissa, whose boyfriend is unfortunately pretty dead. I went through some sewers and found a unique sword, Ewar's Mirage, which is entirely useless and worthless, so that was disappointing. Then I went to the catacombs and took care of the lab trial there, and found myself in the Lake of Kalandra once more. After killing another big spider, I was able to open up a chest which dropped another Chaos Orb. After coming out of there, I made my way over to the docks and looked around for the thaumatic sulfite, just another quest item I needed to find. Next up was the Solaris Temple, where I encountered my first Val side area. These areas were actually introduced to the game alongside Atziri herself, and end with a special sort of chest that can drop enhanced versions of some regular gems, as well as fragments that I'll be needing to even attempt to fight Atziri later on. Unfortunately, I was unlucky and got nothing useful. After that, I met Lady Diala and proceeded to open up what can only be really described as a butthole. In the Ebony Barracks, I faced off with Gravicious, the enemy I need to kill to be able to finally get the main skill I've been looking forward to using this whole time, Ice Trap. So I killed him and then bought Ice Trap from Clarissa in town. Also, I somehow lost my portal that I had made and hadn't picked up 2 waypoints along the way, so I had to do some long distance running to get back to where I was, fighting Piety. I was really curious to see how much of a difference Ice Trap would make over Lightning Trap, and boy oh boy, I was not disappointed. Next up, I went to go do a side quest that I usually ignore, which involves going to the library and finding some golden pages, which I took care of promptly. My reward was the Charge Trap Support Gem, which will let me generate power charges and frenzy charges, giving me more crit and damage than I already had. After that, it was time for the last lab trial I needed, where I had to dodge some poison darts, or, well, in my case, run right into them. While I could go do the lab right away, I decided I would leave it for a bit later when I'm even stronger to make it as easy as possible. Finally, I opened the giant doors to the Scepter of God, where I had an extremely close call. At the top of the tower, it was time to face off with Dominus, the High Templar that exiled us in the first place. At this point, I'm thinking, ice traps are pretty insane. 2.5 hours in, with Act 3 done, I'm realizing that I am gonna have to pick up the pace if I want to be able to even reach Atziri in under 10 hours. Welcome to Act 4, the act with the most diverse environments. We've got deserts, tunnels, volcanoes, fleshy eyeball tunnels, and even trenches. Nobody expects the trenches. There were a few things I wanted to take care of before continuing with the story though. First of all, I wanted to trade some more Chaos Orbs away for a Tinker Skin body armor, which will come in handy much later on for my fight with Atziri. It's a unique body armor that synergizes really well with traps. I can only wear it when I reach level 68, and I'm only level 40 or so right now, but I'm glad I got it for cheap for later on. Secondly, I thought it was about time I went to the Labyrinth to get my Ascendancy class, the Saboteur. The Labyrinth is a special area that unlocks once you've gotten all 6 of those lab trials we did earlier, where you have to navigate through various zones trying not to die to traps or to the boss Izaro, who I've got to fight 3 times by the way, because if I die, I have to start over and it's a huge time waste. Something that really helps though is to have life regeneration like I do with the Vitality Gem, so that the traps are a bit less threatening. All in all, my 3 fights with Izaro went pretty smoothly, and I was able to ascend to the Saboteur class on my first try. I grabbed these notes here because I really had no idea which points would make the biggest difference, and I figured more AoE equals more good. With that taken care of, it was time to actually start Act 4. First, I went to the Dried Lake, where I ran into Vol, who actually kinda fell over as soon as he saw me. Then I opened the door to the mines with the banner that he dropped, and I picked up the Stone Golem gem as my reward for some more life regen, and then I went into the mines. That's where I wound up in the Lake of Kalandra once more, and found myself a couple upgrades. First, I found these gloves that have decent life and 2 resistances, not bad at all. And I found this wand that I was able to craft some spell damage onto back at the crafting bench in my hideout. Crafting in Path of Exile can get extremely complicated, but using the crafting bench to put specific modifiers on your gear is pretty straightforward and crazy helpful while doing the campaign. I pushed on ahead in the mines, freed a ghost, and found myself next to Diala again. At this point I had to decide whether to go into the fiery or the icy portal first, and well, I went for the fire one. I don't know, I just normally do that. I made my way through Comb's dream and eventually had a one-on-one with King Comb himself. With Comb down, it was time to go give Deresso the same treatment. His fight is a bit of a longer fight than normal, but only because he becomes immune every time he needs to catch his breath. Kinda unfair, not gonna lie. Before continuing, I decided to buy a body armor upgrade, something simple that had 4 linked gem sockets so that I could add in the inspiration support gem to my Ice Trap setup. This reduces the mana cost and gives my traps some crit chance. Pretty good. After that, I blasted a hole into the beast with Dialis Giant Laser and in I went. Now, the belly of the beast is probably the creepiest area in the entire game. I mean, just looking at those eyes on the walls is enough to creep anyone out, right? Nonetheless, I kept moving forward and wound up fighting Piety for what felt like the 100th time. And just like that, she went down. Also, would you believe it, she suddenly has a change of heart at this point and wants to help us take down Malachi, the dude responsible for a whole bunch of everything going wrong in Rayclast. But before we can fight him, we have to go take out his 3 cronies, Dodri, Maligaro, and Shavron, so off I went. Having collected some organs, it was time to challenge Malachi himself. He put up a good fight, but this Ice Trap build is really coming together now. I'm 3.5 hours in at this point, and if the rest of the acts go as well as this one, I think I'll have enough time to at least attempt to beat Atziri. Act 5 starts a little bit differently than the others. I have to make my way over to Oriath, a whole other continent, before reaching Act 5's town. So I head up to the Ascent, the first snowy area you'll encounter, and climb up to this giant telescope looking device that conveniently makes a portal that straight up takes me to Oriath. Right off the bat, my life gets threatened by this dude over here, and well, I make my way over to him where I teach him that you really shouldn't be making idle threats. Just like that, I made it to Act 5's town, the Overseer's Tower. First things first, I gotta go through the control blocks and find a miasmator for an extra skill point, as well as fight off this dude who drops a pair of eyes balls. I get this diamond flask as my reward for handing those balls in, which gives me more crit whenever I use it. It's also at this point that I decided I was going to ignore the Lake of Kalandra mechanic from now on, since it seemed to only be slowing me down, and I'm already feeling the time pressure. Then I fought my way through the town square and into the courts and ended up fighting High Templar Avarius next. This fight was actually the hardest fight I've had up to this point, which I know isn't saying much, but have a look. He totally bugged out. Normally he stays right in the middle of the room during his ad phase, but I got totally caught off guard and died for it. Anyways, he went down after a struggle, and next up I backtracked through the courts and the ruined square to reach the ossuary, where I found another Val side area, where I died. I got another sacrifice piece from it though, so I'm that much closer to being able to challenge Atziri. Before finishing up the rest of the act, I wanted to go do a side quest that will give me another skill point, so I made a little trip to the reliquary and found all 3 relics I needed. With that done, it was time to go to the rooftops and challenge Kitava, the boss of Act 5. Also, I ran into a Mirror of Delirium along the way, which makes all the monsters tougher, but it ran out as I was fighting her. Well, apparently I can't win against Kitava just yet, but I'll get my revenge later. With Act 5 done, I now have 30% less resistance to all elements, and every time I die, I'll be losing 25% of my experience bar because of the special flashback event. So dying is even more of a punishment now. A little over 4 hours in, I'm feeling cautiously optimistic about this whole beating Atziri in under 10 hours type of thing. I really don't know if I'm going to be strong enough by the time I get to her, but I certainly hope so. Welcome to part 2, where we do everything we did in part 1 again, but different. You see, well, GGG had this brilliant idea to release 6 acts at once way back in 2017. Jesus, I'm feeling old. And the way they managed to pull that off was to reuse a lot of the zones in part 1 in part 2. It works for the most part though. So that's why we're back in Lion Eye's Watch. First things first, I'm gonna go clear out the Twilight Strand for Lily so that she can offer me all of the gems for sale in case I ever need some of them. I ran around like a headless chicken for a while, but eventually I found the last dude I was missing. After that, I made my way towards Tukohama's fortress when I realized that I was severely lacking in the fire resistance department. So that's something I was gonna have to think about. Also, exclusively to this event, when you got a character to level 50, you got a free MTX mystery box. So I opened that sucker up, and was severely disappointed at the time, because I had never even used Gold Flask before. Well, it turns out that would change in the current league, so it's all good. Anyways, I had a little fight with Tukohama, which went pretty well. Afterwards, I'm not really sure what I was thinking at the time, but I appear to have decided that I wasn't blinged out enough, so I added a spinny character effect that I got a long time ago to look cooler. I mean, why not? Then I was in Chevron's tower, where I encountered another lab trial, cause yeah, we're gonna be going back to the lab for sure. 2 more times, actually. So I took care of that and climbed up the tower, where I faced off with Brutus and Chevron again. After dealing with those 2 punks, I realized that I really needed to craft on some resistances onto my gear, so I went back to my hideout and did exactly that. With my resistances somewhat sorted out, it was time to go hunt down Abarath for an extra skill point. I really love this fight. Honestly, Abarath is the GOAT. I'll see myself out. With him out of the way, I pushed on through the riverways and found another Val area where I got another sacrifice fragment. At this point, I'm only missing the sacrifice at midnight one, which is by far the rarest of the 4. I'm gonna keep on doing these side areas hoping to find it, but if I get unlucky, I'll just have to rely on trading with somebody for it. Next up, I took on the poisonous beetle Rislatha, who didn't really put up much of a challenge if I'm being completely honest, but it's still worth my time for another skill point. I traveled through the southern forest and wound up in a cave where I saw none other than good old Nessa.
Hi again, Schwingy.
She was looking a little fishy though, so I ran right past her. Next, I paused what I was doing because I made my first sale. I sold a Val Flame Blast gem I found in one of those side areas for a whopping 1 alchemy orb. Honestly, I don't know why I bothered, but I'm glad it helped someone out. Over in an area called the Beacon, I found another Chaos Orb and then had to escort these 2 batteries on rails while killing monsters to power up a flame. I don't know, the technology situation in Rayclast is pretty weird. In doing so, a homie known as Waylam shows up with his giant ship and we take off to the Brine King's Reef. Before I knew it, I was alone with Nessa again, but things were a little awkward between us.
Hi again, Schwingy. This is what you get for ignoring me, jerk.
Anyways, it was a pretty long battle, but I persevered, and exactly 5 hours and 9 minutes in, Act 6 was done. Welcome to the Bridge Encampment, where we killed Creighton back in Act 2, remember that? It doesn't matter. The first thing to do in Act 7 is to go to the crypt, where I found a special map type item in a box. After that, I went back to the Chamber of Sins, where Silk opened up a bunch of portals leading to a place called Maligaro's Sanctum, which of course is where I fought Maligaro again. Then I went down to the second floor of the Chamber of Sins and completed another lab trial. After leveling up, I finally had enough mana to squeeze in the Grace Aura that I picked up way back in Act 3. This gives me a bunch of evasion, making it harder for enemies to hit me. It's a great defensive upgrade. After that, I ran into this terrifying random gorilla that kept chasing me. He wasn't a boss or anything, just some random rare with Soul Eater. After taking him down, I walked into what used to be the forest encampment from Act 2 and had a showdown with our exile-hating buddy Groost. Serves him right. Then I found another Val area, no Midnight Fragment once again, but I don't lose hope. Over in the Dread Thicket, I had a couple of things that needed taken care of. First, I needed to find 7 Fireflies for Yina. And second, I needed to fight a giant bear monster thing called Gruth Cool. I died. Next up was the Causeway, where I put a passive point into a keystone called Eldritch Battery, which makes it so that my energy shield gets used as mana instead of protecting my life. This is super useful for my character since I'm reserving so much of my mana, and traps use up a bunch of mana too. A nice little quality of life upgrade. Then I went up to the spider-infested Temple of Decay, where I would face off with one of the hardest bosses in the game, Arakali. Okay, so she wasn't that tough, I guess. Or maybe this build is just that strong. Just over 6 hours in, Act 7 is complete. Welcome to Act 8. We're back at the Sarn encampment and things are more or less the same, except now it smells like old person. My first job here is to go and investigate the smell, so I found myself in the sewers again. After fighting some random mobs, I followed my nose until I reached the source. Surprise! It's Dodri, again! So I tried killing her, and I died. With Dodri taken care of, I walked on over to the cave where I found this Ankh. I'm gonna go with Ankh. So I found this Ankh and brought it to Clarissa, who then wanted to use it to resurrect her dead boyfriend, which, you know, never goes well. After that, I went to the Grain Gate and followed a trail of dead bodies until I found this gang of weirdos that were basically just asking to die. I got a skill point for my troubles. Then I wound up in the Solaris Temple where I did an expedition. These are cool little encounters where I can place some explosives and blow up the ground, setting a whole bunch of monsters free. I got 2 Chaos Orbs out of it, so that was pretty good. Then, just down the hall, I got another one. After that, I killed this guy and picked up a Sun Orb, which I'll be needing in a bit. Next, I had to go to the bathhouse, where I had to take care of 2 things. One, I needed to find the gardens and kill a super annoying boss there, Yugul. Also, on the way over, I found my first map, which is an endgame item that I'll get into later. And 2, I needed to go do another lab trial. Actually, while I was doing it, someone wanted to buy something, so I stopped halfway, traded the dude, and then went back in and completed it. That was kinda silly. After that, I realized that I forgot to do one of the other trials earlier in Act 7, so I went and took care of that. Then it was time to actually go do the Cruel Labyrinth and get some more Ascendancy points. All in all, it went really smoothly, and I ended up taking this node here that gives me a bunch more damage. With Cruel Labyrinth behind me, I just had to go collect the Moon Orb over in the Lunaris Temple, and then bring both of these orbs to these statues over here, which brought them both to life. And of course they wanted to kill me. And just like that, Act 8 was done. Only 2 to go. Act 9 is one of those acts that always just kind of blurs into one foggy memory for me. First things first, I had to go over to the descent, not the ascent, the descent this time. I ended up in a place called the Atziri Desert, where I ran into another side area, still no midnight fragment unfortunately, and then I had to fight off waves of enemies to get a so-called storm blade. This let me enter another zone where I had to go find a sand pit, which is where I faced off with none other than Shakira. And I died. After that, I made my way over to the Boiling Lake, where I walked by tons of really lifelike statues, which certainly couldn't possibly be related to the basilisk I was about to fight. After taking it down, it was time to take care of another lab trial in the tunnels. I almost died, but not quite. It was a close one. I also found this phase run gem off of a monster and realized that I might as well be using it. It just gives me a little speed boost and lets me walk through enemies for a short duration. It's pretty good. Not long after that, I went and fought Kira over a feather. And this lightning guy who was surprisingly tanky. I went over to Sin, who was just chilling by this big fleshy mass, and he opened it up for us. I was back in the belly of the beast, but this time everything was decaying, so it's a totally different vibe than Act 4. Anyways, then I had to go fight all of Malachi's homies again for the third time, can you believe it? First was Chevron, then Maligaro, and finally Dodri. After taking them out, they all combined like they were straight out of Power Rangers or something, and I had to fight them one last time to finish off Act 9. Just under 8 hours in, Act 9 was finished. There's only one act left, but I feel like I'm running out of time here. With no time to waste, I went straight into Act 10. First off, I had to go save Bannon from a group of demons over on the rooftops. That was easy enough. Then I made my way over to the Torch Courts. Here I found a pretty good helmet upgrade. I just had to use some chromatic orbs to change the colors of the sockets so that I could actually put my correct gems in there. It took a little while, but I got it. Then I moved on through the desecrated chambers where I got absolutely obliterated. I ran all the way back and faced off with Avarius Reincarnated. With him out of the way, I went to go see how Bannon was feeling back in town, and well, he had some sort of spiritual awakening. After that, I found another Val side area, and still no sacrifice at midnight fragment. I guess I really will just have to buy it from somebody else. Next, I went over to the control blocks to eliminate Valenta for my final extra skill point. With Valenta gone, I only had a few more things to take care of before finishing the campaign. First of which was to go do the last lab trial in the ossuary. With that done, I was able to go to the labyrinth and get my last ascendancy points I would be getting for this run. But first, I wanted to get a level up so that I could finally wear that Tinker Skin body armor I bought such a long time ago. With Tinker Skin equipped, I was ready to go take on the Merciless Lab. Which went really well, and I was able to grab this life regeneration ascendancy node at the end. With all my labs done, it was time for Innocence to open a path for me to go ahead and have my rematch with Kitava. Et voila, the campaign is done. 8.5 hours in. I only have 90 minutes left to try and defeat Atziri at this point, and I'm only level 68 still. Will I be able to manage it? I am really starting to have doubts. With the campaign done and my time running out, I knew I had to at least try to fight her once. But before I could do that, Kirak had to teach me all about Path of Exile's endgame system, maps. I won't go into the details, but basically maps open up portals to different areas where you can go fight tons of mobs with random modifiers and a boss somewhere in there. So I did the first one that is absolutely mandatory to unlock the map device for my hideout, which I needed because that's where I can place those sacrifice fragments in to open up the portal to Atziri. So I went and did the map, and it turned out to be a really juicy one. I got an entire level from it. I also found some sorely needed upgrades, like these boots with spell suppression, resistances, and movement speed, which is finally replacing those deer stalkers I found way back in Act 2. I also found a shield which boosted my damage by a lot. With those couple upgrades and less than 70 minutes on the clock, I felt like I had to at least try to beat Atziri right now. So I went and traded for that last sacrifice fragment I was missing, and it was time to put my character to the test. The thing about fighting Atziri is that you actually fight 2 other boss fights in the same map before you can even reach her. So I pushed on through the temple to face off with not just 1, but 2 Val Oversouls. They put up a good fight, and considering how long it took, I realized that my damage was not as good as I thought it was. I might be in trouble here. Then I fought my way over to the next set of bosses, an incredibly deadly trio. I had some really close calls and then died to bleeding, which I was not immune to. Back in my hideout, I realized I would definitely need to fix that right away, so I crafted my life flask to have bleed immunity on it. And I went back in. Only 4 portals left. Over time, I was able to whittle them down, and then I climbed up that long staircase leading up to Atziri's throne. This is it. This was my chance to finish this challenge right here and now. If I fail this now, I don't think I'll have enough time to get stronger before trying again. Here goes nothing. Oh, I got hit.
The damage is surprisingly good. Come on, so close. Okay, okay. Back to the center. Good, go for this one here. Get out of that circle. Get out of that circle. Oh, I got hit. Okay, okay. In the middle. Oh, big circles. Oh, okay. I wish I had Culling Strike, but I do not. Ooh. Okay. She's gonna do another clone phase. Can I get her? Can I get her? Come on. Yes! Oh my god. No way.
I couldn't believe it. I managed to take her down without even dying at level 71, wearing a 4-link and having just completed one single map at exactly 9 hours and 5 minutes in. Unbelievable. Also, she dropped the best item she possibly could have, this fizz belt, which I was able to sell for a quick 2.5 divines. An awesome reward for an awesome challenge. Of course, thank you for sticking around until the very end of the video, you wonderful people. Let me know if you enjoyed this format in the comments. It's my first time trying something like this, so I'm really curious to hear what you guys think. Also, remember to like and subscribe. I make these videos for you guys, so yeah, if you could do that, it really helps me out. And I guess that's it. Have a great day. Love you guys. Bye.
Love you too.